So what's another primary source kind of text?
Flannery O'Connor's Wise Blood.
Right.
And that's a difficult book sometimes to teach because students misunderstand it. Often they think that she's lampooning evangelicals, and the fact that she's Catholic they don't understand, and so that takes a lot of leading them through often and it is a complex book just inherently and overdrawn, and it's kind of extreme portrait. So you have to kind of get them to think about what is she really doing, as a Catholic, how can she find something of value in the people she's writing about is so extreme, and just all the interpretive issues of that. What I find is that the best students love that book. The students who are not as good struggle with it because they can't quite figure it out sometimes. So that's another one where you have to kind of figure out in terms of teaching how you reach to different groups who are reacting to it in different ways.
Would you ever use the film? There's a Wise Blood film, isn't there? That was John Huston.
John Huston,
yeah.
Yes. It's a wonderful film, and I've used excerpts of that again after having a discussion of the book. I would show some excerpts. I show the beginning of that film just to get the kind of setting and portrayal of the characters and all. Mm-hmm. I could see how showing the film and not having them read the book would be a good idea in terms of discussion. They're so film oriented, students are, and so they're in some ways able to engage a film even better than a book like O'Connor's that might have some literary complexity that is simplified in the film. And I like to do that. I like to show films to cover a topic or an issue rather than a text necessarily. And I lecture on Judaism in the South, but I show that wonderful film Shalom Y'all. And that's a very engaging film for the students.
So the other one is Delta Jews?
Yes.
Is that what? But I've never seen Shalom Y'all.
Shalom Y'all is a wonderful film. It's got a very engaging narrator. The film begins with his grandfather, who was a hat salesman who came from New York City. He was an immigrant. Came to New Orleans because that was his area of his business, and he drove his big American car all through the South, selling hats to department stores and small country stores and all of this. And the narrator host is his grandson. And so it's a very personal story. And he also meets along the way and interviews really interesting people, Eli Evans, He goes to Texas and interviews Kinky Friedman.
The musician.
Kinky Friedman and the Texas Jew Boys.
Right.
And who's just totally outrageous. And in the film, he's just totally outrageous but funny.
Yeah.
And so he kind of interviews people along the way, and it's kind of about this young man's identity and being Jewish and being Southern. So it's a really engaging film. You'd like it. And Delta Jews is also a good film.
Yeah. What is it? What sort of assignments do you have them do? Do you have any research projects, or is it too large a class and a survey to incorporate that kind of thing?
I have them do a family religious history, which I picked up this technique, this assignment from one of my professors at the University of Texas, Howard Miller, who taught a course on American religion. And so I stole the idea from him, which I give him credit. Mm-hmm. But it works really well. I give these detailed guidelines about the paper, and it's a 7 to 10 page paper. And they are to interview, it's basically a project in interviewing family members, ministers, to get a sense of their family religious history. And I tell them, even if you're not religious, you got that way by some sort of historical process. And so I have them give them a set of questions to ask their family about, where's your family from? Talk about as far back as you can on one or both sides. Just find out what you can. You may know more about one side of the family than the other. That's okay. Mm-hmm. What kind of denominational life did they have? Were there mixed marriages in terms of different denominations and religious traditions? And then I try to get them to relate it to themes of Southern religious history that, as we've talked about them in class. And encourage them to, the other part of the assignment is to do some library work, to do some reading, and if nothing else, encyclopedia articles about state religions, city religions, local church histories of their churches in the area, and to do a kind of landscape study, the geography of their religious tradition. And a lot of our students are from Mississippi or other small towns, and so I tell them go, and they usually do this when they're home visiting over a weekend or a holiday. Drive around your community, see how many Baptist churches there are, how many Methodists, is there a Catholic church, or look in the phone book, see what kind of, how the listing are of the churches, and what, that'll tell you something about the religious landscape that your family was a part of. And that means something. To be a Catholic in South Louisiana is different than being a Catholic in a small North Alabama town. So it's important to know the demography and geography, and the more of that they can bring into it, that's really how their grade is distinguished. Because in terms of the oral histories, they almost always enjoy that. They enjoy, when they do it, talking to family members and kind of becoming more aware of what their religious history was.
Have you had some of the students who want to go on then to pursue the study of American religion and religion in the South from the class?
I do. I don't know how many, but I know the ones who talk to me about it, and then I've had several who have talked to me about it, and I had one student who's in the honors college and wants to do her senior thesis on religion in the South.
Oh, great.
So it kind of leads to other dimensions, other work.
In the end, what's sort of the big takeaway you want them to have from the class? If they remember, some kind of concept, or...
I think it's a more sophisticated understanding of how religion affects historical events and processes, and to gain a better sense of their identity in terms of both the South and a particularly religious traditions associated with the South. And I stress the evangelical Protestantism. I try to portray the complexity and diversity of that tradition and of the other traditions that are in the South. The last couple of lectures are on globalization and Southern religion, and talk about the coming of Latinos and other religious groups, other ethnicities to the South in the very recent period, the last 2 decades, and how this is made for a changing complex. Even though I read somewhere that the Buddhists are growing at a faster rate in the South than Baptists.
Huh.
Now that's a dramatic statistic to throw out to undergraduates,
but it might be only 0.01%.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As I say, there's still more Baptists than people in the South.
Yeah.
And but what it means is the Baptists are growing at a slower rate than they used to, and the Buddhists are here, in numbers that they never were before.
Atlanta would be a great city for that kind of changing demography.
Absolutely.
There's a large international food store. I remember sort of like a kind of grocery store that's on the outskirts of Atlanta. I remember going to, and that in itself just spoke volumes about the new immigration, the post-1965 world of the South, and there'd be all sorts of religious connotations there, I think, too.
Absolutely, that's a great example. And there are mosques and Buddhist temples and others around Atlanta. I think the largest Buddhist temple in the South is in Atlanta, in fact, and it's recent and it's a multi-million-dollar investment, and reflects the growing population up there. And a lot of the Buddhists who come are their demographic, socioeconomic profile is that they're often high-tech people, Southeast Asians, who are coming with skills and often with money and education, and then you have the Latinos who are coming often from a different demographic in terms of being poor and having social needs, and the Catholic churches are really challenged often to provide priests and Spanish language services and all of this. I think I read that North Carolina, that Catholicism may be the second largest religion in North Carolina now because of recent immigration, which would be a very dramatic change for any southern state except Florida and Texas and Louisiana.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
I enjoyed talking with you.